Afternoon, a hunter called Upton police to report what appeared to be a human skull that was found in the woods near Mendon Street in Upton. Upon police detective Nick Palmieri receiving the call, he responded and confirmed that it indeed was a human skull. Following protocol, the State Police Detective Unit assigned to the Worcester County District Attorney's Office was notified. A search was continued, and there were bones and other clothing that were found in the area off the Mendon Street in Upton. There was no identification with the body. The remains were sent to the medical examiner's office. Investigators, including the Upton Police, the State Police Detectives assigned to the Worcester District Attorney's Office, State Police Crime Scene Services, State Police from the Norfolk District Attorney's Office, the Upton Police worked around the clock looking at missing person cases in the region, trying to determine the identity of the skull that they had found. They returned to the scene on Monday, and more human remains were found, as well as clothing. Yesterday, using dental records and other evidence, it was determined that the remains that were found in the woods were those of James J. Robertson, who had been missing since being taken from his parents' home in Avon by two men on New Year's Day of 2014. Norfolk District Attorney Michael Morrissey is here. We'll talk about that case shortly. Upton Chief Bradley will also be available to answer questions. Before that, though, I want to acknowledge all the hard work that went into this case and the incredible cooperation that has been part of this investigation. We literally went from having a human skull and some bones, along with a few other items that were found in the woods the day after Christmas, to an identification of a homicide victim within 72 hours. I want to recognize for their good work the Upton Police, Chief Michael Bradley and his officers, as well as Detective Lieutenant Philip Dowd from the Worcester DA's, State Police assigned to the Worcester DA's office, and the State Police Detective Unit, State Police Crime Scene Services, State Police K-9 from Norfolk County, and Lieutenant Battagliano, the State Police Detectives assigned to the Norfolk DA's office, as well as the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, and for everything that everyone did in a cooperative effort that was just short of incredible. Working together in cold conditions, tough conditions, to put an identification with the remains that they found in the woods. I also want to credit the hunter who alerted the police and put this investigation into motion. And at this time, I'd like to hand it over to DA Michael Morrison.
Thank you, Joe. As many of you are aware that on January 1st, for almost 2 years today, 2014, James Jamie Robertson was kidnapped from his home, and on the guise of people purporting to be constables taking him for a drug or alcohol test. That was the last the family ever saw of Mr. Robertson. With the help of, I think, the media and others, and particularly, obviously more recently, the Upton Police Department, the hunter, and the work that has been done by the State Police and the medical examiner, we've now come to the point where we have an identification. So it's something, it's fair to say, I believe it's somewhat of a relief to the family that they now have been able to identify their son who has been missing for 2 years. And there is a lot more work that we have to do ahead of us, but sincerely I would just like to thank very much all those involved. As Joe earlier said, that the District Attorney's Office obviously have worked well together, and State Police, but the local police were terrific. Chief Bradley and the people here in Upton have really made a difference, and when everybody pulls together, we get a good result. So I'm thankful for everybody for the help, but there's a lot more work to do. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Yes. Were the bodies found on private or public property?
Chief.
Yeah, the remains were found on private property.
And this hunter was hunting on, was this his property he was hunting on, or is this just private property he was allowed to hunt on?
Private property that's not posted, so it is open to hunting.
Why was it so important to get out there, those flyers and the word to hunters to be on the lookout for these remains?
I'll take that one, Joe. You know that we had, the family had always thought the worst may have happened to their son, and there was a general belief that he may have been dumped in a wooded area. So we had a press conference earlier. We took advantage of the hunt that the DCI had at the Blue Hills to really put it back into the media's eye and attention. And I think, honestly, it's just one of those things where hunters go where traditional walkers and joggers don't go, that you occasionally get very lucky, and I think that's one of the cases here. Just very fortunate that the hunter was paying attention, and we're most grateful for the fact that he reported to the police, he did all the right things, so it just didn't seem to work out. Sometimes it's better be lucky than, it's one of those cases.
Do we have a motive as far as why the kidnapping happened?
We have an ongoing case that's still pending, and there's a lot more work that we still have to do, so I really have no comment on that at this time.
What's the connection to Upton?
Well, like I said, that is part of the ongoing investigation, so we won't comment on that either.
Are charges going to be upgraded for those who've been arrested for the kidnapping?
Well, as many of you can imagine, that there are 4 individuals who were charged in the initial case involving the kidnapping, and we have to follow the evidence, and the evidence is still actively being gathered, and the detectives continue to work. So as that happens, then the process will continue along, but at this time, I really, will have no comment on what we will or will not do.
Are those individuals, any of them still in custody and maybe released?
There's 3 in custody and 1 released.
In terms of forensics, when you have a body discovered 2 years after a disappearance, how does the time that's elapsed, how does that make it more difficult or perhaps impossible to determine cause of death?
Well, as you can imagine, that District Attorney Early and the Chief had pointed out, is that it's a complicated scene here in Upton, and we've spent 4 days filled out, and the detectives here in Worcester have, working with dogs and other forensic tools they have available, have started to put together all the pieces. So, it's just a complicated crime scene with many moving parts, and it obviously presents some unique challenges. But I would be remiss if I didn't say the medical examiner has been most helpful. I think my friends in the state police would indicate that in very quick order they were able to at least make identification, but I don't want to minimize the work ahead of them, but the medical examiner has a lot of work to do.
Have they been able to determine at this point how long the remains were out there?
Well, I mean, we know that he was missing New Year's Day, and our investigation is ongoing as well, but I think it's fair to say most of the better part, probably of 2 years, but it's, again, the medical examiner will have to answer that question.
And if I just might add on that, as D.A. Morrissey said, with regards to the work, you can't minimize or understate everything that went into this, whether it be the methodical search of the area. I mean, you got to thank the Secretary of Public Safety, Dean Bennett's office, the medical examiner's office, for all the good work, all the cooperation we got on this case to make it happen very quickly. Within 72 hours, literally they found the skull in the woods to an identification, which leads us to a homicide investigation. The cooperation really, it was just amazing putting all of this together.
It's just really a case of really good police work, and that's what we hope will continue.
And sure it will.
Do you think the medical examiner will be able to determine a cause of death?
We'll leave that to the medical examiner.
Yeah.
And at this point, with regards to any future charges, we're not going to speculate on that, whether it be Norfolk County or Worcester County. We'll just see where the evidence takes us, as D.A. Morrissey said, and we'll go from there.
When was the family notified?
Well, we stayed pretty close to the family, and they became aware shortly after we did, so it's fair to say that it's one of the things that we try to do. And we've worked with them over the last couple of years, so we continue that relationship as well.
When you
What did
spoke with
that-
them, what was their reaction?
Well, I'm told that as you can imagine, sad, obviously, that it has hit them, that the reality has set in, that their lost son has now been found, and determined to be deceased. So I think it's a kind of a mixed emotions between the sadness and some relief, I think, that they now know what happened to their son. So, it's difficult. It's 2 years, almost 2 years to the day. So my heart goes out to the family. You got to remember, Mr. Robertson was a son, a brother, and he's a father of a couple of children. So it's bittersweet, I guess you'd say, at this time.
Anything else?
All the charges against the 4 in this case are still pending in court?
Yes. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the help.